There is a specific hour of your day when the coffee you drank this morning stops helping you and quietly starts working against you. Most people are asleep by the time it happens, or trying to be. Because caffeine doesn't leave when the buzz does, over the next 12 hours it moves through your body on a schedule you can almost set a watch to, and there's one point on that schedule that decides how well you sleep tonight. This is what caffeine actually does, hour by hour. Let's decode it. First, caffeine gives you nothing. No energy, not a drop. That's not an exaggeration, it's the whole mechanism. All day long, a chemical called adenosine builds up in your brain. It's the exhaust from burning energy. The more it collects, the sleepier you feel. It works by landing on receptors, like a key sliding into a lock. Every lock it fills makes you a little more tired. Caffeine is shaped almost exactly like adenosine, close enough to fit the same locks, but it doesn't turn them. So it sits there, taking up space, blocking the tired signal from ever arriving. Which means the tiredness never stopped. You just stopped receiving the message. Hold on to that because it explains everything that happens next. Minute 0, the first sip. Caffeine is absorbed fast. Within about 15 minutes, it's already crossing into your bloodstream, and unlike most things you eat, it passes into the brain almost unopposed. Around 30 to 45 minutes, it hits peak concentration. This is the sharpest you will feel all day. Although 1 cup means almost nothing as a measurement. A small home brew might carry 70 milligrams. A large coffee shop cup can carry over 300, same word, 4 times the dose. And the feeling is real, even though the mechanism is a trick. With the tired signal blocked, your natural stimulants get a clear road, focus sharpens, reaction time improves, mood lifts slightly. This is also why caffeine genuinely improves athletic performance, one of the few legal substances where that's well established. Your muscles didn't get stronger, your perception of effort dropped. But your body noticed the intruder immediately, and the response it chose is the reason tolerance exists. There's a second effect layered on top. With the tired signal muted, dopamine signaling works more freely, which is why coffee doesn't just wake you up. It makes the next hour feel mildly rewarding. Hour 1. Your heart rate is slightly up. Blood pressure slightly up. Your body has released a small amount of adrenaline because caffeine nudges the same emergency system. That's why coffee on an empty stomach can feel like anxiety. It isn't in your head. It's a genuine, mild stress response, and your brain reads it the same way it reads real fear. If you're someone whose coffee makes them jittery rather than focused, that's largely genetics. A single liver enzyme decides how fast you break caffeine down, and the difference between fast and slow processors is enormous. 2 people, same cup, completely different day. Hour 2 to 3. Here's where the famous coffee crash is supposed to happen. Except it mostly doesn't, and what's really going on is stranger. And it isn't only coffee. Tea carries less, but energy drinks often match a strong coffee while adding a large dose of sugar on top, which is why the crash from them feels so much sharper. Caffeine is still in your system at hour 3, plenty of it. What changed is that all the adenosine you produced while it was blocked has been waiting in line the whole time. The crash isn't caffeine leaving, it's the backlog finally reaching a receptor that just opened. Which is why a second coffee works so well, and why it quietly doubles the problem you'll meet tonight. Hour 5 to 6. The half-life. This is the number that actually matters, and almost nobody knows it. Caffeine's half-life is roughly 5 to 6 hours. That means after 6 hours, half of the caffeine you drank is still circulating. Worth knowing, that afternoon slump you blame on coffee isn't really coffee at all. Your body clock produces a genuine dip in alertness in the early afternoon every day, whether you drank anything or not. Not half the effect. Half the actual amount. Still there. Still docking into receptors. Still blocking the cue. So a coffee at 2 in the afternoon means a meaningful dose is still working inside you at 8 in the evening. Hour 10 to 12, and this is the part the entire video was building toward. You lie down, you feel tired, you genuinely believe the coffee wore off hours ago, and by feel, it did. But a quarter of that morning dose is still inside you, and here's the twist, it doesn't have to keep you awake to damage your night. And decaf is not 0. A decaf cup still carries a small amount, usually a few milligrams, which is harmless for most people but worth knowing if you're unusually sensitive. In a controlled study, caffeine taken 6 hours before bed cut total sleep time by more than an hour. The volunteers didn't notice. Their own ratings of sleep quality barely changed. That gap between what you lost and what you noticed is the whole problem. What it steals is specific. Caffeine suppresses deep sleep, the heaviest, most physically restorative stage, the one that does your repairs. So you can sleep 8 hours and still wake up feeling like you slept 5. The clock says you rested, your brain disagrees. And then you do the only reasonable thing. You make coffee. That's the loop. Caffeine costs you deep sleep. The missing deep sleep makes you tired, and the tiredness sells you the next cup. Every step of it feels like a free choice. Now, tolerance. Because your brain doesn't accept being blocked forever. There is one genuinely clever trick here. Drink a coffee, then immediately nap for 20 minutes. Sleep clears adenosine while the caffeine is still being absorbed, so you wake up as it arrives to empty receptors. It's the one time the two work together. Within a couple of weeks of daily use, it does something clever. It builds more receptors. More locks means the same amount of caffeine now covers a smaller share of them. Same cup, less effect, so you drink more. And with all those extra receptors waiting, the mornings before your first cup get genuinely rough. That's not weakness. That's a real withdrawal headache caused by blood vessels in your head that had adapted to being narrowed. Which is the real reason your first coffee feels so good. A large part of it is simply relief from the withdrawal your last coffee created. So should you quit? Honestly, probably not. Caffeine is one of the most studied substances on Earth, and for most adults, moderate intake looks safe and may even carry some benefit. The problem was never the coffee, it was the timing. So here's the entire fix, and it costs you nothing. Count back 8 to 10 hours from your bedtime. That's your last cup. For most people, that lands somewhere around 2 in the afternoon. Second, wait 90 minutes after waking before your first cup. Your body already floods you with cortisol in the morning, and caffeine on top of that peak is mostly wasted while pushing your whole caffeine day later. And if coffee reliably makes you anxious rather than sharp, that's a real signal, not a personality flaw. The stress response caffeine triggers is stronger in some people, and stacking it on an already anxious morning simply amplifies what's there. Third, if you want your tolerance back, you don't need to quit. A few days lower is often enough for those extra receptors to start disappearing. That's it. Same coffee, same amount, moved earlier, and the night stops paying for the morning. Because the strangest thing about caffeine is that it was never lending you energy. It was quietly borrowing tonight's and charging you interest for it. If this decoded something for you, subscribe, because we're going through the whole body one system at a time. And if you want to see what happens when the sleep debt actually comes due, watch what 24 hours without sleep does to you next. For most healthy adults, research generally lands around 400 milligrams a day as a reasonable ceiling, roughly 3 to 4 ordinary cups. Pregnancy, heart conditions, and anxiety disorders all have their own lower limits, and that's a conversation for a doctor, not a video.